Hey there. Tonight we're stepping into a part of history that's sparkled on the surface, but quietly decayed underneath. It's the kind of story you rarely find in fairy tales or costume dramas, though the gowns are familiar, and the candlelight feels almost romantic. But this isn't a story about glamour. Not really. It's about the women who lived inside the illusion, who smiled with numb lips, blinked through burning skin, and called it beauty. If you've ever had a bad hair day, or worried about the angle of your profile in a photo, this story is for you. Because once upon a time, women didn't just stress over their appearance, they were slowly destroyed by it. If you enjoy uncovering the darker corners of history, told gently and with care, feel free to subscribe and share this space with fellow sleepy souls across time. We'd love to know where you're listening from too. Drop a comment with your country or city. There's something cozy about knowing someone in Lisbon is nodding off to the same story as someone in Kyoto or Cape Town. So go ahead, settle in. Let the weight in your chest soften. Let your breath deepen just a little. You're about to wake up in England sometime around 1590. And no, you're not in a warm bed with sun-dappled linen. You're in a drafty room with a stiff neck, a frozen pitcher of water on the table, and a beauty routine that will quietly destroy you. You know it's morning not by sunlight, but by the echo of footsteps in the hall. Your maid is always first. The door creaks open before you're fully awake, and without a word she sets the basin down, cold water sloshing a bone-handled spatula resting beside it. It's not for your teeth or your breakfast. It's for your face. You sit upright slowly. The mattress is lumpy and thin, stuffed with horsehair that shifts beneath your weight in strange ways. But it's not what you think about. Your hands automatically move to your cheeks. Even before the mirror, you know what's waiting there. The tightness, the flaking, the thin crust of white lead that has hardened in the night like plaster on a cracked wall. This is your face now. Not soft skin or freckled warmth, but a brittle chalky shell that must be maintained, scraped, smoothed, sealed. She starts with the spatula ivory dulled at the edges, scrapes gently not to remove the powder, but to loosen it enough for a new coat. The goal is never to start fresh, only to pile new on top of old. Venetian ceruse, they call it. Imported from Venice, expensive, elegant. A mixture of white lead and vinegar blended until it becomes the texture of softened butter and applied with reverence like it's holy. They say it gives you the look of nobility, pale, unblemished, like marble. And maybe it does, but it also seeps through your skin quietly, cruelly. Lead doesn't ask permission. It simply enters, through the pores into the bloodstream, settling in bone, muddling thoughts, stealing memory. You remember your aunt once, witty quick with Latin, and sharper with wit. Now she stares too long at corners, and repeats questions she's just asked. They say it's age, but you know better. Her face is still perfect, still white, and her fingers still tremble when she lifts her wine. You don't ask questions. No one does. You simply endure. Once the old layer is loosened, your maid mixes a new batch in a shallow dish. The smell of vinegar rises a sharpness that bites the inside of your nose. She dabs it onto your cheeks, your forehead, your chin. Gentle strokes at first, then more pressure as the powder begins to dry. It always dries too quickly. It tightens like wet linen hung in the sun. Smiling becomes impossible. Speaking becomes strategic. Too much movement cracks the surface. Too little, and you seem cold. Your eyebrows have already been removed, plucked months ago, and kept that way ever since. Brows are seen as too bold, too earthy. Instead, your face is left bare a canvas for powdered artistry. Hairline, too, is plucked back slightly. A high forehead is considered elegant. You haven't looked like yourself in years. You rise slowly and move toward the window. Outside, the fog is thick, clinging to the gardens, and curling against the leaded glass. You know better than to open it. Sunlight is dangerous. It tans the skin, reveals the powder, and makes the sweat run. If the ceruse drips, it leaves pale trails like melted wax on a statue. There's a pale spot on your nightgown, where your cheek touched the pillow. Your maid sees it but says nothing, just tightens the ribbons at your throat and begins to prepare your hair. There is no perfume this early in the day, only powder and quiet, and the muffled hum of other women getting ready in other rooms. It's a house of mirrors now, each chamber, holding a version of you dressed in different silks painted with the same mask. Breakfast is silent. No one eats much. You sip warm water laced with rose chew, a piece of bread. The powder on your lips tastes like metal. You avoid speaking. You nod when spoken to. You hold your teacup with two hands because your fingers shake if you don't. You're not sure when that started. Your cousin across the table hasn't blinked in some time. Her pupils are uneven in the light. You wonder if she remembers what she had for dinner last night. You wonder if you do. A dance instructor arrives before noon. You hate the dance lessons most, not for the movement, but for the heat. The room is always too warm. Your face begins to sweat around the edges of the powder, just beneath the wig line. You feel it bead, hesitate, and slide. But you don't stop. You keep spinning. You hold posture. You pray no one sees, that no one smells. The dance ends. You curtsy. You're lightheaded. You return to your chamber and sit motionless for a full minute, afraid to touch your face. And then it begins again. A fresh coat for the afternoon. Ceruse again. A little rouge this time to fake vitality. Your lips are painted with a red paste made from crushed beetles' wax and tallow. It smells faintly of death. You don't smile. You can't. But you are by every standard of the time beautiful. Later that night, long after the candles have gutted out, you lie flat beneath your sheets, face to the ceiling. You try not to move. The powder is too fragile, too thick. You do not want to stain the pillow again. It's already been replaced twice this month, and so you breathe carefully, evenly, like the dead. You think of a time long ago, maybe, or only imagined, when beauty meant warmth, when laughter didn't crack paint, when lips were soft and faces moved. You think of that time and you feel a tear slip down your temple. You do not wipe it. It would leave a mark. You're dressed now, or mostly. Your outer gown awaits a soft gray silk with subtle embroidery, curling along the cuffs like smoke. It looks finer than it feels. The inner lining has stiffened with age and starch, and the seam beneath your shoulder blade chafes with every move. Still, when you catch a glimpse of your reflection in the polished metal plate, nailed to the wall, you look convincing, regal almost. That's the goal, isn't it? Not to be comfortable, but to become the illusion of something untouchable. The door creaks slightly as you open it. The corridor beyond is hushed, padded with layers of worn carpet muted by time and dust. The castle doesn't wake up all at once. It stirs in slow, careful waves. Somewhere a page boy's boots tap across flagstone. Elsewhere the scrape of a pail against stone suggests a maid drawing water before the rest of the house demands it. You move quietly, heading down the corridor toward the antechamber. That's where your day properly begins. And yet before you arrive, something stops you, a sound, or more precisely, the absence of one. The hush is nearly complete, broken only by the soft shuffle of your own slippers. You pause at a gilded doorframe and glance to the far end of the hallway, where a nobleman approaches from the opposite direction. His boots are polished spurs, gleaming coat stiff with brocade and expectation. He sees you, of course he does, but he does not speak. Instead, as if obeying an unspoken script, he slows his pace bows at a precise angle and halts exactly 3 steps from where you stand. Not 2, not 4, 3. He smiles faintly. You return it faintly. The space between you holds. There was a time when you thought this was reverence, a formality born of class of royal etiquette. But now you understand better. The distance isn't about honor. It's about protection, specifically his, from you. The bow, the pause, the 3 measured steps, they're designed not just for ceremony, but for survival. He doesn't want to get too close. Not because you're dangerous in any meaningful sense, but because you carry a secret your skin can't hide anymore. It's your breath. You know this without being told. You've caught it on the air yourself when leaning over to examine a page, or when whispering to a maid. That faint metallic tang mixed with something sour. The sweetness of decay that lingers behind your teeth. At first you blamed the rich meats, the lack of oranges, the long nights, and even longer winters. But that was before you learned what ceruse does not just to skin, but to gums, to nerves, to bone. The lead seeps deeper than the surface. It works its way inward, and your teeth have started to notice. 2 molars loosened last month. One came out in your sleep and left a crimson halo on the pillow. You wrapped it in a ribbon and tucked it behind the hearthstone. A private burial. You didn't tell anyone, not because you're ashamed, but because it's too common to mention. Everyone knows. No one says a word. The nobleman clears his throat softly. You incline your head, and he continues past the air between you, remaining politely unbothered. You walk on, and the echo of his spurs fades behind you. But the moment stays. 3 steps. That's the rule now. Not just for him, for everyone. Visitors, stewards, even some of the ladies in waiting. They offer greetings from a careful distance, and if you move too close, there's a hesitation. A shift backward veiled as grace. And yet no one confronts you. No one dares say the truth aloud. Because you're not just any woman in this palace. You're part of the display. Your presence, your appearance, your silence. They're all pieces in the larger performance. And performances must be maintained no matter how sour the air becomes. In the antechamber, a silver basin waits filled with rose water and floating petals that have already begun to wilt. You dip your fingers in and rinse your lips gently. It helps, but only for a moment. The bitterness seeps back before your hands are dry. A lady approaches with a fan of pressed silk and offers it wordlessly. You accept it and raise it to your face, not because you're flushed, but because it's one more layer between yourself and the truth. The truth is this: your breath smells like metal, like old coins left in the rain. And it isn't just yours. Across the court, in gilded chambers and candlelit galleries, other women hide the same secret. Their lips are red, their cheeks are bright, but inside they're rotting. Lid doesn't just paint the face, it rewrites the body. Historians today argue whether Elizabeth ever truly believed her own myth, that the whiteness of her face was divine, not chemical, but whether or not she knew she continued to wear it, layer after layer, even when it cracked, even when it bled. Especially then, some say she wore thicker powder after an outbreak of smallpox covering the scars with ceruse, until no skin remained. Others whisper that she refused to eat in public during her later years, not from vanity, but because her teeth had mostly fallen out. You think about that sometimes when sipping broth behind a screen, when turning your head just enough to speak sideways, never fully facing the person across from you. There's a kind of dignity in silence, a kind of mercy in the unspoken rule, don't get too close. You fan yourself slowly now, letting the motion soothe your hand. The joints ache more than they used to. You blame the cold, the corsets, the endless mornings. But a voice in the back of your mind, the one that never sleeps, suggests otherwise. You push it away. There's a schedule to keep, a gown to change, a visitor to greet. As you rise, a soft pain blooms behind your eye like a whisper. You blink once slowly and keep moving. After all, it's just another morning in the palace. And the distance. It's just part of the dance. The 3 steps between you and them, it's not fear. It's fashion. At least that's what they'll tell themselves. The corridor turns narrowing slightly where the wall curves to meet the west wing. Light spills in here through stained glass, casting soft pinks and golds across the polished stone. You walk slower, not because you're tired though you are, but because this is the stretch where the servants can see you best. Posture matters. Head high, shoulders back. No limp, no wince. You pause outside the dressing chamber. It smells, as it always does, of beeswax dried lavender, and something meatier beneath it all. Not unpleasant. Not exactly pleasant either. The scent is simply lived in. A mixture of hair powder and patience. The door opens before you knock. Of course. They've been expecting you. 2 attendants greet you with identical nods, their hands folded in front of their aprons. They're already in motion before you've said a word. You step inside and the ritual begins. Your gown is carefully removed, folded neatly, inspected for wear, or loose threads and replaced with a lighter dressing robe, open at the back. A chair is pulled forward low and wide, carved with lion's paws at the feet. You sit already, bracing yourself. The wig is brought in on a stand as reverently as if it were a crown. And in a way it is. Nearly 2 feet tall, arched in swooping waves and powder-dusted curls, it towers with theatrical intent. The base is lined with linen. The frame inside is wire and horsehair. The exterior human hair, some of it your own, much of it not. Blended, curled, and stiffened with mutton fat until it holds its monumental shape. The weight of it used to make your neck ache. Now your spine adjusts without complaint. That's what practice does. They begin by smoothing your real hair tightly against your scalp, slicking it back with pomade made from hog's grease. A few bobby pins a layer of linen. Then the structure comes down like a cage lowered over your head with a soft clink. As the frame settles into place, they secure it with ties beneath your chin. The sensation is intimate, but never gentle. You've learned to breathe shallowly through your nose. The powdering comes next. Fine white powder dusted over the wig with rhythmic flicks of a puff. The scent is unmistakable lavender orris root and something sharper, burnt rosemary perhaps. It tickles your throat. You suppress the cough. The powder isn't just for color. It's to hide the sheen of grease, to repel moisture, and most critically to mask any movement beneath the curls. Because by now you know what might be living there. You didn't believe it at first. When you were new to court, you assumed the talk of lice and fleas in wigs was gossip exaggerated by jealous ladies or scorned servants. But the first time you felt something shift at your scalp, just behind the ear, you understood. They tell you not to remove the wig more than once every few weeks. The oils must set. The curls must stay. The structure is too delicate for daily handling. So the creatures come. Quietly at first. A tickle here, a phantom itch there. Then the unmistakable sting of something biting. You remember the night your handmaid found a louse in your bedding and tried to hide it from you. She flicked it away as if it were nothing, then washed your linens twice before dawn. You never spoke of it. One winter a fellow courtier swore she found a dead mouse curled inside her wig, drawn in by the warmth, the powdered starch, the animal fat. She fainted, or so the story goes. No one dares confirm it. The infestation isn't constant, and not every woman suffers it. But those who do learn to keep still, not just out of poise, but out of strategy. Movement stirs things. Stillness helps you pretend. The practice of elaborate wigs wasn't limited to your palace. It bloomed across Europe, especially in France under Louis XIV and Louis XV, where powdered perukes became a mark of aristocracy. Some reached such heights they required special supports, and women had to kneel inside carriages to preserve their shape. Historians today agree it wasn't just about fashion. It was about visibility. The taller the wig, the higher the status. Height meant health, wealth, fertility. And irony, of course, because few women who wore them had much of any. And yes, the powders often carried their own dangers. Starch made from wheat or rice was mixed with scents, and sometimes even arsenic compounds. Not enough to kill, but enough to irritate the skin, the lungs, the mind. Still, you sit as they adjust the final curls and step back to admire their work. The mirror doesn't show your face so much as it shows the sculpture atop your head. You look taller, more important, distant. Your scalp itches faintly. You ignore it. It's strange, you think, how the higher the hair, the quieter the woman must be. You can't nod with this on. You can't run. You can't duck. The wig demands poise, elevation, stillness. Your smile must be subtle, your laugh soft. Beauty is quiet. Beauty doesn't flinch. There's something almost holy about this restraint. But it's also a prison. You stand slowly, careful not to unbalance the weight. The attendants curtsy as you glide toward the door, your shadow long and unfamiliar on the parquet floor. Somewhere in your curls, something stirs. You keep walking. You step into the smaller chamber next to your dressing room, the one lined with pale tiles and a single frosted window, just wide enough to let in the bleak morning light. This is not a place of glamour. It smells of vinegar and soapstone, faintly metallic, with a whisper of ash. The stone basin in the corner is already filled. The water is cloudy. 2 women are waiting, not attendants, exactly specialists. Their aprons are plain and stiff, their hands scrubbed raw but clean. They nod without words and motion you forward. This part of the day is not about appearances to others. It's about erasure. The robe slides down to your waist. You sit spine straight and place your hands in your lap. The first woman dips a cloth into the basin. You don't flinch even when the cold cloth touches your cheek. You've learned not to. Recoil only delays the process. She begins to scrub. The cloth is coarse, not quite burlap, but close. It moves in small, tight circles across your skin, rougher than necessary. You know better than to complain. This is the only way to make the next layer stick. After the cloth comes the paste. A second bowl is brought out, this one filled with a pale mixture the consistency of wet clay. You recognize the smell immediately. Vinegar crushed ash, a bit of ground rice. It's not a mask, it's a peel. The concoction is spread across your face in patches. First the forehead, then the cheeks, then the chin. The burn begins almost instantly. At first it's tolerable, like sunburn left too long. But as the minutes stretch, it deepens. A sting behind the nose, a tightening around the temples. You breathe through your mouth, shallow and measured. This, they tell you, is how porcelain is made. In the court, paleness is not just preferred, it's expected. A lady must glow beneath candlelight. No freckles, no flush, no natural warmth. Warmth implies labor. Color implies commonness. And you, of course, must be neither. The paste is meant to remove the top layer of skin, to strip away imperfections, and expose the pale underlayer, new, tender, raw. They call it renewal. You call it endurance. This was once a ritual reserved for actors and courtesans, for queens who needed to outshine every threat. But now it's standard woven into the daily life of noblewomen across the continent. In 17th century England and France, a concoction known as aqua tofana, a paste containing vinegar, arsenic, and lead, was sometimes used as both a beauty treatment and a murder weapon. Smoothed onto the face in the guise of skin care, it could, in large enough doses, seep into the blood over time. You wonder if your version is safer. You wonder if it matters. The mixture is left to dry. Your face stiffens until you can barely blink. One of the women fans you gently, not out of kindness, but to help the paste crack evenly. The skin beneath needs to breathe, they say, even if it screams. When it's time, they remove it in sections, lifting the paste away like brittle paper. The sensation is somewhere between sandpaper and bees' stings. Your eyes water. You blink them clear. No one says a word. A damp cloth is pressed to your skin, then rose water, then a trace of oil. When it's done, you are pale, the kind of pale that doesn't belong to the living. Your cheeks shine faintly under the oil, not with health, but with the sheen of something scoured clean, blank, controlled, obedient. And yes, you'll apply more lead lateceruse to cover the blotchiness, the redness, the damage. But for now, this is the base layer, your canvas. There's an argument among scholars still unsettled about whether women of your rank truly believed in these treatments, or merely endured them as part of their role. Was it vanity or survival? Did they dream of beauty, or simply fear becoming unremarkable? You suspect the answer was both. You suspect the answer still is. The servants help you stand. You walk carefully, muscles, stiff eyes, dry lips burning. The air feels too sharp against your cheeks. Every breath tastes faintly of vinegar. Back in your dressing chamber, the mirror confirms what you feel. Your skin is ghostly, smooth, thin, fragile as lace. The second robe is ready. You shrug into it without thought, the fabric cool against your raw skin. You sit again. This time your feet are placed in a basin of warm water laced with cloves. The heat rises in slow waves. You close your eyes for a moment and allow it. Just a second. Just a breath. You remember once years ago when a younger maid tried the facial paste on herself just to see. She didn't dilute it properly. Blistered for days. The other servants laughed behind her back, but you didn't. You understood. The pain wasn't foolishness. It was hunger. Not for beauty exactly, but for what beauty brings. Attention, protection, power, even if temporary, even if false. The basin water cools. The robe is changed again. Powder corset, petticoat, overskirt. The transformation continues. But beneath it all, under the porcelain mask, you are still you. You and the skin you lost to be seen. The sensation begins not in your chest, but behind your eyes. A strange sort of pressure, like you've stared too long at a candle flame. Then it drifts down your temples, your jaw, your throat. You try to swallow, but the motion's restricted. Your breath shortens, your ribs shift, and your spine already stiff. Screams in a language no one at court ever dares to speak. You are sitting technically, but it's not what most would call rest. The chair is upright, unforgiving, and upholstered in a tapestry that prickles through 3 layers of fabric. Your posture is perfect, rigid, noble, symmetrical, because it has to be. The corset allows nothing less. It was tightened this morning before breakfast, before your first sip of watered-down claret. The maid pulled the laces in 3 stages first, for shape, then for control, then for silence. The third tug left you dizzy. That's when she stopped. For your own good. The corset is made of whalebone and velvet embroidered by hand. It was a gift from your aunt, a duchess who never had children, and still says things like, "A lady's waist must suffer to make room for her voice." You don't entirely understand what that means. You're not sure she does either. What you do understand is this breathing is now a luxury. Each inhale must be shallow, dainty. Each exhale must be quiet. Laughing is dangerous. Coughing is scandalous. Sneezing could undo an hour of work. Your lungs obey, barely expanding, compressed beneath the stays that press you into someone else's idea of perfection. And yet here you are, poised, glowing according to the chambermaid, a vision according to your mother, a candidate for marriage according to the countess who keeps peeking at your hands to see if they tremble. But you're not glowing. You're boiling. Underneath the embroidered bodice and lace-trimmed sleeves, your chemise clings to you. Sweat pools at your collarbone, not that it shows. The bodice is lined in silk, but silk doesn't breathe, it traps. Your skin prickles like it's been kissed by 1,000 nettles. There's a pain just under your ribs. It started yesterday as a pinch, and today it's a throb. You wonder if something has shifted inside you, a liver, a lung. One of those soft, forgettable things no one ever talks about at tea. It's said that Queen Catherine de' Medici introduced the tightly cinched corset to French court fashion in the 16th century. Her waist reportedly measured less than 13 inches, a fact whispered with awe as though survival were proof of virtue. From then on, the corset was no longer optional. It was ritual, identity, proof of discipline. And over time it evolved from soft bodices with modest boning to the steel-laced hourglass of the Georgian era, to the suffocating straight-front S-bend of the early 1900s. Fashion followed ideology. A woman's form reflected her role, restricted, controlled, ornamental. You shift in your seat. The corset doesn't allow much, but you find a new angle just enough to keep the room from spinning. You smile at no one in particular. That's important. Smiling suggests ease. A memory flickers. The Baroness of Alnwick, last summer, fainting on the garden terrace. She had bent to admire a rose, and that was enough. Her corset, made of crimson brocade, was rumored to have been tightened by her jealous younger sister. No one confirmed this, of course. It didn't matter. The story was too good to need truth. The tidbit that lingers from that scandal isn't the fainting. It's what they found later. 2 cracked ribs and a hidden bruise shaped like the tip of a metal busk. She didn't speak of it. She returned to court within the week. A slightly looser corset, a slightly tighter smile. Historians still argue over the true dangers of corsets. Some say the horror stories were exaggerated, born from 19th century morality campaigns or sensational novels. Others point to X-rays, medical journals, and post-mortem reports of organ displacement, rib deformity, and even infertility. The debate continues, but one truth remains for many women. Beauty meant discomfort, and discomfort was expected. You stand, slowly, carefully. The corset does not permit sudden movements. Your heart pounds against your spine, searching for space. You inhale barely and move to the window. The air outside is thick with summer, but at least it's free. Below in the courtyard, 2 chambermaids chase a loose chicken. You envy their movement, their laughter, their breath. You rest one gloved hand against the windowsill and wonder how long you've got before the pressure becomes too much. An hour, a day, a lifetime. But you can't think about that now. The bell will ring soon. It's time for the promenade, and the promenade waits for no woman, especially one who isn't beautiful, upright, and ready. So you turn from the window, take 2 shallow breaths, and smooth the folds of your skirt with trembling fingers. There are appearances to maintain, and appearances, as you well know, are heavier than steel. The parlor is warm now, warm not by fire, but by layers of air lavender-scented floral, and faintly metallic, an invisible atmosphere clinging to the walls and slipping under doorways. You sit with your hands folded in your lap, perfectly still. You are not allowed to fidget. You are not allowed to sweat. You are not allowed to be a body with heat and discomfort and stray hairs. You are an artwork on display. The maid enters again with a small velvet-lined case. Inside it looks almost delicate, almost soft, 2 small curved slivers of what appear to be fur resting in a cradle of silk, as though they were fine jewelry. But they are not jewelry. They are your eyebrows. Yours were removed years ago, not plucked or shaped, but entirely shaved away. It was the style then, and it is still the style now. A high, bare forehead speaks to purity, to control, to divine elegance. Nature is for peasants. You, however, are of noble blood, or at least noble expectation. So your own brows were sacrificed in girlhood, replaced by fashion's quieter demands. The fur is from a mouse carefully harvested, trimmed and shaped into graceful arches. A dab of glue, then a press of the fingers, and they are in place again, obedient and serene. You dare not raise them too high. The glue is finicky. Heat makes it slip. Last week, one slid half an inch sideways during the bishop's luncheon. You made an excuse about a moth and left the room in shame. The Duchess never let you forget it. This is not a rare occurrence. In the 18th century, mouse skin eyebrows became a popular solution for noblewomen who had either removed their brows or lost them due to toxic cosmetics. White lead face paint called ceruse often led to hair loss over time, and in response fashion stepped in. Beauty kits from the era included glue scissors and tiny brushes for applying false eyebrows made from fine animal fur. Mouse fur, soft and dark, offered just the right blend of delicacy and control. There's something faintly grotesque about the intimacy of it. That this creature, this household pest, is now pressed to your skin, made to mimic your expression. But it's also funny if you squint. Somewhere out there in a palace just like this one, someone's soup was interrupted by a floating mouse brow. That's not rumor. That's historical tidbit. A lady's eyebrow detached mid-dinner and slipped from her temple to her bowl. It sank. She pretended it hadn't. The others did the same. It was considered rude to notice. You glance at yourself now in the polished silver plate on the wall. It's not a mirror exactly, those are rare and expensive, but it does the job. The brows are there, symmetrical and still. With them in place, your face looks calm. A little too calm, perhaps. Like a porcelain doll, or a wax figure left too long in the sun. But this is what beauty requires. You stand slowly testing the glue. It holds for now. You cross the room and sit again near the window, spine straight. The rest of your face is already powdered rouged and painted with care. Your lips bear a subtle tint. Your lashes have been darkened with soot and oil, and your cheeks carry that faint, deliberate flush that suggests health. That's the irony, of course. The paleness implies wealth and leisure, but the rouge must suggest energy, liveliness, vitality. You must be both passive and vibrant, cold and warm, a paradox built from paste. Mouse fur brows were not the only creative trick employed in the pursuit of perfect features. Throughout the 17th and 18th centuries, women applied beauty patches, small shapes of velvet or silk, cut into stars or moons or hearts and glued to their faces. These patches covered pockmarks or blemishes and doubled as flirtatious code. A patch near the mouth hinted at passion, near the eye mystery, near the cheek boldness. Fashion was not just fabric, it was language. Yet scholars still debate how widespread these eyebrow practices truly were. Some argue they were limited to satirical pamphlets, exaggerated fashion plates, or courtly in-jokes. Others point to real artifacts, beauty boxes, personal letters and household accounts that mention mouse brow trims or glue for the forehead arches. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between fashion and farce, between what women actually did and what men love to mock. Either way, you know what's real. You feel it every morning as the glue sets. You see it every night when one corner begins to peel. You smell it in the faint musk of rodent fur, masked only slightly by rosewater. You shift again. A feather tickles your temple, the edge of your wig's plumed adornment. Another strange invention. Your natural hair, powdered and drawn back, was deemed insufficient long ago. Now a full periwig rests atop your head, styled in curls, pinned in place, and powdered to the point of absurdity. It smells of starch and lavender, and something slightly spoiled. If you tilted too far back, the entire thing might slip off. It has before. You've learned to keep your chin slightly down your neck long. There's a knock at the door. The maid again. She enters with a tray. Tea, thin biscuits, a folded note. You lift the cup slowly, both hands steady. Your corset doesn't allow for slouching. Your wrists adorned with lace brush against the cup's handle. You sip. The tea is cold already. The note is an invitation to a gathering at the Countess of Halifax's, an evening salon perfumed and candlelit. You sigh. Another evening of sitting very still, blinking. Just enough laughing, just enough. Never sweating, never sneezing, and always remembering which parts of your body might shift, or slip or slide if you dare to act too human. Outside, the clouds have gathered. You watch them thicken, mute, and deliberate. Somewhere a storm is preparing. Inside, you touch your brow lightly. It doesn't move. Not yet. But you know what waits beneath it. Bare skin, pale and bare and forgotten. A high forehead that speaks of wealth of control of a childhood memory you barely recall the last time you saw your real face in full. You let the thought pass. It's easier that way. The maid collects the tray. The invitation is placed on your lap. You smile at her gracefully, carefully. She smiles back, but only with her eyes. There's nothing left to adjust. Your appearance is complete. You are for all intents and purposes beautiful, and somewhere behind that beauty, you remain silent, bound, and watching. The scent hits you before you step through the doorway. It's layered like the rest of this world, rich and rotting at once. A wall of perfume greets you, thick enough to taste. Notes of rose and jasmine drift over something darker, animalic, musk civet, and the haunting sweetness of ambergris. Each whiff feels like a memory you didn't make. And somewhere in all that silk and spice, you catch the faintest sourness, something like sweat and dying teeth. You're in the ballroom now, or at least what passes for one in this old manor, its walls freshly lime-washed, and its chandeliers dripping wax despite the breeze. There are women everywhere, gilded, powdered, cinched, and scented. They float in pairs and trios fans, fluttering like nervous birds. Men watch. They always do. Your steps are measured. You've practiced them. Heel first, then toe. Never drag. Never hurry. As you glide across the parquet floor, you feel your slippers tug slightly at the waxed surface enough to keep you grounded. That's the thing about beauty here. It's always on the edge of slipping. You pass a cluster of ladies murmuring near a column. One wears a perfume so strong it nearly masks the wound on her chin, barely hidden beneath her rice powder and silk veil. Another gestures with gloved hands, and as she laughs, you catch the glint of something silvery in her mouth. Her teeth are polished, yes, but several are missing. You know why. Lead poisoning. It begins quietly. A tremor in the fingers, a grayish cast to the skin. Then come the headaches, the fatigue, the sharp metallic taste at the back of the throat. And the teeth. They loosen, rot, fall out. No one talks about it, not aloud. But everyone knows. You do too. The rouge on your cheeks is stained with cochineal crushed beetles. The powder on your skin is white lead. Your lips shimmer faintly from mercury salts. Your body is a canvas painted in poisons. This is not metaphor. It's history. For centuries, European women used lead-based cosmetics known as ceruse to achieve a fashionably pale complexion. Especially in the Elizabethan and Baroque courts, this makeup became synonymous with beauty and status. Ceruse made from white lead and vinegar covered blemishes and created an otherworldly whiteness. But over time, it also seeped into the skin. Lead is cumulative. Each application builds on the last. The face becomes a site of quiet ruin. In the ballroom, someone lights another candle. The room flickers with gold and shadow. The perfumes thicken with heat. You feel it at your collar behind your ears. The air presses in. There's a man now approaching. His wig is powdered, his waistcoat embroidered. He bows and offers his hand. You take it. He smells like sandalwood and something bitter like cloves left too long in wine. You smile. The corners of your mouth resist, stiffened by the day's paint. You hope it doesn't crack. He leads you in a dance, a pavane slow and measured. Your hands remain gloved, your steps precise. Each movement is a negotiation between balance and illusion. Your corset groans softly beneath the strain. Your shoes pinch. A drop of sweat trickles behind your ear, and you pray it doesn't carry pigment down your neck. There's a story passed quietly from maid to maid about a noblewoman whose skin began to peel mid-dance. Her face layered in ceruse, and scented oils could no longer breathe. A faint, then a fall. When her mask of beauty cracked, it took part of her with it. Some historians still argue whether these tales are exaggerated, whether noble women truly died from their cosmetics, or if it was gossip dressed in rouge. But lead poisoning is well documented. In medical accounts from the 17th and 18th centuries, symptoms among fashionable women often aligned with what we now recognize as heavy metal toxicity: hair loss, neurological tremors, infertility, and yes, tooth decay so severe that teeth simply fell from their sockets. You twirl. Once, twice. The movement lifts your skirts just slightly. Your knees ache. Your breath shortens. Your smile holds. The music ends. Applause. The man bows again. You curtsy. Neither of you mentions the smell. You move toward the open windows now. A draft. Thank heavens. The night air carries the scent of hedgerow and distant rain. You lean slightly, catching your reflection in the glass. You look perfect, but you feel blurred, like something under glass slowly melting. And you remember something your maid once whispered as she washed your face. If beauty were only skin deep, my lady, we wouldn't need so many layers. You didn't respond. What could you say? She was right. Behind you, laughter swells. The candles burn lower. Somewhere in the room, another lady excuses herself. She walks carefully, chin lifted, one hand steadying her brow. You understand that too. Sometimes the face you wear isn't the one that stays. You press a gloved finger to your temple. The powder is dry. Your skin beneath less so. But you're still holding. For now. The candle sputters once, then steadies. You're alone again, or as alone as a noble woman can ever be in a household, filled with servants, visitors, and expectations. You've returned to your dressing chamber quiet now after the crush of the ballroom. But you don't rest, not yet. There's one final task, one final detail to complete before the day's illusion can fully set. The lip rouge. It rests on the dressing table in a tiny pot of mother of pearl. The lid is slightly worn, the surface smudged by generations of fingers. You've used this one so many times its edge has taken on the curve of your nail. You dip a finger now, slowly, carefully. The texture is strange, cool, and sticky, a bit too firm. You press it to your lips, then rub them gently together. A faint tingle begins almost immediately. It's not the pleasant sort of tingle. It's sharp, a metallic itch. But you know it well. You've grown used to it. This rouge isn't made from flowers or fruit. It's a mixture of red lead and vermilion, occasionally softened with a little crushed cochineal, those same beetles used in your cheek color. But the active bite, the subtle numbness that comes from something else. Arsenic. Arsenic trioxide, to be specific, a common additive in certain 18th century lip tints and tooth powders. Colorful, effective, and quietly deadly. You purse your lips, checking the shape in the tin mirror. It's a good line today. No smudges. The trembling in your fingers has eased. The tea helped. Or perhaps the tiny dose of poison has simply done its work, numbing the nerves just enough to make movement feel smooth again. Either way, the result is satisfactory. In some parts of Europe, lip rouge was a declaration. The French called it the little sin. The English, ever more restrained, called it vulgar, except when worn by queens. Queen Elizabeth I reportedly favored red lips, framed by her iconic chalk-white skin, using a concoction of lead vinegar and red pigments that over time poisoned her skin and body. Later, royal courts followed suit, experimenting with bolder shades and increasingly potent recipes. Some formulas included cinnabar, which contains mercury, and others relied on carmine from insects. The effects were cumulative dry lips, mouth sores, tremors, eventually nerve damage. Of course, no one spoke of this aloud. It was impolite to question the cost of beauty, especially when that beauty served a purpose, because it wasn't really about seduction or even admiration. Your painted face was a message, a symbol, proof that you had the time, the means, the servants, and the patience to devote hours daily to this appearance. Pale skin meant you didn't toil outdoors. Crimson lips meant you had the confidence to smile without needing to eat. Powdered cheeks, health simulated. All of it carefully arranged, thoroughly rehearsed, and underpinned by layers of cosmetics so toxic they doubled as slow-acting weapons. There's something quietly horrifying about it, isn't there, that your own reflection so carefully curated might be the very thing that's undoing you? Still, scholars debate just how widespread these dangers were. Some argue that elite women applied these cosmetics sparingly, minimizing their risk. Others suggest that cumulative exposure was far more common than once believed, pointing to medical records of unexplained tremors, miscarriages, and skin disorders among upper-class women. And then there's the cultural silence so complete, it's hard to tell whether women understood what they were absorbing, or simply didn't care. You rise now, slow and stiff. The day has nearly ended. The servants will extinguish the lamp soon, and the house will sink into its nighttime rhythm. Muffled footsteps, the soft click of latches, the rustle of layered nightgowns. But not before you remove the day's mask. You begin with the lips, a soft cloth, a bowl of rose water. Gently, gently, though the color resists, you dab until the skin is raw. Then the cheeks. Powder and sweat mix into paste. The cloth comes away gray. The forehead next. The mouse brows are unglued and tucked into their velvet case. You never look at your bare face in the mirror afterward. It feels too vulnerable, like an unfinished painting, like someone else's memory. Last of all, you pull the pins from your wig and place it on its stand. Your scalp slick and warm throbs with relief. A ring of pressure remains where the frame once sat like a crown that never quite leaves. You sit for a moment quiet. The air smells of starch powder and the faint echo of ambergris. Outside the night murmurs crickets, distant wheels, a servant coughing down the hall. Inside everything stills. And for a brief second you allow the thought to surface. What would it feel like to be bare, to walk through the day with your real face, your real skin, your real breath? But you don't linger on that thought. You've learned not to. Instead, you fold the cloth, rinse the bowl, and prepare for bed. Because tomorrow you'll do it all again, and the poison will still be waiting. You're not in Europe anymore. The scent of lily powder and lavender water fades, replaced by the delicate fragrance of lotus blossoms, warm rice, and old lacquered wood. The light here is different too, filtered through paper screens and casting long, soft shadows across polished stone floors. You're in the inner quarters of a noble household during the Song dynasty in China, sometime in the 11th century. And before you even learn the names of the women around you, you notice their walk, slow, delicate, and oddly tilting. At first you think they're simply being graceful. But then, as one of them sits to remove her embroidered slippers, you see it the shape of her feet. Or rather, what's left of them. They're impossibly small, just a few inches long, bent and folded under, in a way that looks neither natural nor survivable. The toes are crushed beneath the sole, the arch unnaturally high, and the heel flattened into a strange curve. There is bandaging, of course, clean and silk-wrapped, though a spot of blood peeks through. And as she rests the slipper beside her, the embroidered crane and peony motifs almost seem to mock the pain it conceals. You don't need to ask. You already know this is footbinding. Known in Chinese as tinglian or zulian, the practice began as an elite fashion trend and eventually spread throughout various social classes over the centuries. But here in the refined world of the Song aristocracy, it is still an emblem of nobility, a mark of discipline, beauty, and submission. Women with bound feet were said to walk like willows, swaying in the breeze, their steps short and trembling. This gait, known as the lotus walk, was considered the height of feminine allure. And like many things in elite society, pain was part of the point. You sit beside the young girl whose name you learn is Mei Lian. She smiles politely but says nothing as her maid carefully unwraps the bindings. The flesh beneath is pale and bruised, the skin blistered from the constant rubbing of silk on broken bone. The toes have long since atrophied, curled into the sole like dried flower petals. And yet Mei Lian winces only slightly. She's been doing this since she was 5 years old. Her mother began the process during the autumn festival, wrapping her feet tightly in bandages, after soaking them in a concoction of herbs and animal blood said to help soften the bone. Then over the years the bindings were made tighter and tighter, bones purposefully broken and rebroken to achieve the ideal shape, the golden lotus foot, no longer than 3 inches. If you're imagining a beauty practice rooted in cruelty, you wouldn't be wrong. But to Mei Lian and her family, it's a gift. It's an investment in her future proof that she is refined, controlled, and above manual labor. A woman with bound feet cannot run, cannot farm, cannot even stand for long. She is to be cherished and protected. Or so the narrative goes. Historians still debate whether foot binding was solely imposed by men, or whether it was sustained in part by women themselves. Mothers wanting to secure good marriages for their daughters. Older women enforcing the standard out of pride and tradition. What is clear is that once the custom became embedded in upper-class society, it became almost impossible to refuse. The idea tragically was that pain equaled virtue, that the more one suffered for beauty, the more beautiful one became. And Mei Lian is not just suffering physically, she is preparing for a banquet tonight. Her presence isn't optional. Though barely 17, she's expected to sing Porti and smile at her father's guests, one of whom might soon become her husband. The embroidered shoes, once a symbol of elegance, have become tiny prisons, soaked from the inside with herbal tincture and pain. She can hardly stand, let alone glide gracefully across the lacquered floors, yet she does. Every step is a performance, every flinch a silent betrayal. You follow her as she prepares. Her maid assists with makeup, subtle but symbolic. A touch of rouge to her lips, a whisper of color to her cheeks. Her brows are already plucked thin, reshaped to match the style favored by court poets. Her hair is long, dark, and impossibly straight-combed, until it shines, then tied with silk ribbons. From behind, she looks like a porcelain doll, poised, fragile, flawless. But the moment she turns, you see the truth in her eyes, an alertness, a flicker of pain she can't hide. As she kneels to pick up her fan, the motion is not fluid. Her balance is off. You reach to help instinctively, but she politely declines. She's practiced. Falling in public would be humiliating, but private suffering is acceptable, even expected. You sit with her for a while as the other women of the household pass through, many with similarly bound feet, all bearing the same restrained expressions. You notice that conversation is kept light. Compliments are whispered. Posture is everything. No one dares complain about the pain. In fact, it's often admired. One older woman shows off a particularly small shoe, barely the size of her hand, and the room offers soft gasps of awe. It's not the shoe that impresses them. It's what it means, control status beauty beyond nature. And this perhaps is the most disturbing part of all, that a woman's ability to endure such agony was not only normalized but exalted. Even in sleep, Mei Lian's feet are wrapped. The bindings must remain or the bones will begin to shift, undoing years of progress. Infection is common. And though this home is clean, you've heard stories of girls whose toes fell off in the night, whose bandages hid more than just bruises. One particular tidbit, recorded in the memoirs of a Qing dynasty scholar, described a young bride who refused to remove her bindings, even on her wedding night, fearing that her husband would be repulsed by the truth. She died of gangrene weeks later. There are rare exceptions, of course. Some women escaped this fate by joining religious orders, or living in rural regions where the custom was less prevalent. But for most, especially in elite circles, refusal was unthinkable. A girl with unbound feet was said to walk like a peasant and might never marry well. Even emperors were known to request their concubines display their smallest shoes as a form of entertainment. The eroticism of the bound foot, the way it moved, the way it was concealed and revealed, became a deeply embedded part of the aesthetic culture. It's difficult to watch without feeling a mix of sorrow and awe. Sorrow for the pain endured. Awe for the grace maintained in spite of it. That night, as Mei Lian attends the banquet, you see her gliding across the floor in her embroidered slippers, head-high smile fixed. The room is filled with light chatter, the scent of jasmine tea, and the soft clink of porcelain. She bows to her father's guests, pours wine, and listens quietly to poems recited by men twice her age. She's praised for her elegance. No one notices her trembling hands, or the slight catch in her breath when she stands too quickly. No one but you. As the evening winds down and she returns to her chamber, you catch a glimpse of the aftermath. Her slippers are stained. Her socks, once white, are tinged pink. Her feet throb beneath fresh bindings, and yet she doesn't cry. She sits quietly as her maid applies another herbal poultice, then lies back against the embroidered pillows, with a sigh so quiet it almost isn't there. And you realize beauty here is not just about appearance. It's about sacrifice. It's about learning to exist in pain so thoroughly that it becomes invisible. You close your eyes beside her. Somewhere beyond the paper screen, a night bird calls. The moonlight filters softly across the wooden beams. And beneath the silk and tradition, Mei Lian falls asleep. Not because the pain has stopped, but because she's learned how to carry it like silk, folded elegant, and unbearably heavy. You stand just inside the shadowy doorway of a chamber, carved from cool limestone, the scent of crushed herbs and faint incense lingering in the air. You're in ancient Egypt now, thousands of years and entire worlds away from the powdered wigs and corsets of Versailles. The desert sun cuts sharp golden lines across the floor, through a slit in the shutter, illuminating plumes of fine dust that rise and fall with each breath. And there she is, a priestess, a noblewoman, or perhaps a high-ranking court attendant. It's hard to know exactly which. Her posture is perfectly poised, her eyes fixed on the small bronze mirror before her, as steady hands draw dark lines across her eyelids, with a precision that suggests long practice. The applicator she holds is no modern eyeliner pencil. It's a slender reed dipped into a coal paste, a mixture made from galena, or lead sulfide finely ground and mixed with animal fat or water. The result is a thick, smoky pigment that enhances the almond shape of the eyes and protects against the glare of the sun. At least, that's what they believed. And to be fair, they weren't entirely wrong. Coal did help reduce sun glare, and in some formulations even protected against eye infections. But not this one. This blend in particular has a sharper chemical smell. This one stings a little too much. This one contains enough lead to damage nerves and slowly impair vision. You kneel closer, watching the coal glisten slightly as it's applied to the inner rim of each eye. The act is almost ritualistic. In ancient Egyptian culture, cosmetics weren't merely decorative. They were spiritual, medicinal, and social. Coal carried divine significance, symbolizing the protection of Horus and the warding off of malevolent spirits. Even children wore it. Men, women, pharaohs, peasants. No one was exempt from this aesthetic spiritual duty, and yet the priestess's hand trembles slightly as she finishes one eye and begins the other. You notice her fingers twitching, a subtle but telling sign. It's the kind of thing that could easily be dismissed as fatigue or distraction. But if you've been paying attention, you'll know better. The mirror, polished bronze, reflects a face that has endured heat ritual, and perhaps even grief. Her skin is coated with a soft layer of ochre-tinted powder, likely made from red iron oxide mixed with a binder-like animal fat. On her lips you spot a faded red pigment, subtle now but once vibrant. That shade was probably derived from crushed carmine beetles, or perhaps a concoction of red ochre and fat. Cleopatra herself was said to have worn such mixtures. It was a sign of power, beauty, and life. But the ingredients were far from benign. This lipstick, if you can call it that, was often thickened with bits of gum wax, or even resin, and many formulas used mercury or lead for their sheen. Some even added bits of crushed ants for extra color. The end result was glamorous, sure, but also toxic. Over time, daily absorption through the lips and skin led to gradual deterioration of the nervous system. Historical records mention women losing feeling in their fingers or developing tremors after years of use. But who would question a little numbness if it meant maintaining the favor of the gods or the pharaoh? There's a soft knock at the doorframe. Another woman enters, carrying a tray of small vessels, each sealed with linen and beeswax. One by one, she unpacks the tools of transformation, scented oils pressed from blue lotus, and myrrh alabaster jars of rouge and body paint, and a few sharpened sticks for applying pigment. You realize that this is no simple beauty routine, it's a sacred ceremony. Each movement, each application, each scent is chosen with care. Some are meant to attract favor, others to invoke protection. Still others are meant to disguise grief, fatigue, or even illness. You watch as a mixture of powdered malachite green and shimmering is blended with oil and painted on the lower eyelid. It's stunning in this light, regal. But again, you wonder how long until it begins to sting. The priestess does not flinch. She has done this 100 times before. She is a master of illusion, both for the divine and the mortal. And that is where the beauty of this world diverges from the glamour of later courts in Europe. In Egypt, beauty was divine, it was cosmic balance. It was Maat. Outer appearance reflected inner harmony. Even the dead were adorned with makeup and perfumed oils to present their best selves in the afterlife. But this devotion came at a cost. Scholars still debate just how widespread and damaging the effects of heavy metal-based cosmetics were in the ancient world. Some argue that the trace elements were too low to cause long-term harm. Others suggest that cumulative use, especially by elite women, who reapplied multiple times daily, led to subtle but chronic conditions, fatigue, infertility tremors, and gradual cognitive decline. And while there are no autopsy reports from 1300 BCE bone analysis, and historical medical papyri offer clues some women may have paid for their radiant eyes and lips with shortened lives. Still in this room, with its limestone walls and faint echoes of temple chants in the distance, none of that is visible. The priestess reaches for a carved ivory comb and begins to untangle her hair. It's long, heavy, and slightly scented, oiled, and perfumed as part of a beauty regimen that also doubled as a form of hygiene. You learn that hair was washed with citrus juice or lather, made from natron and goat milk. For coloring, henna was popular. To prevent lice, women sometimes wore wigs or shaved their heads entirely, and wore elaborate braided wigs, instead often decorated with beads, gold threads, or semi-precious stones. But those wigs, you soon learn, were not always the salvation they seemed. The glue used to attach them, often a mixture of resin, beeswax, and animal fats, could melt in the heat or harden into crusts that irritated the scalp. Worse, lice sometimes burrowed into the wig bases themselves, rendering the entire ensemble a breeding ground for infestation. Ancient Egyptian tomb paintings are filled with depictions of beauty and regality, but rarely do they show the itching, the sores, or the slow decay beneath the glamour. As the priestess stands, her face now transformed into the ideal of divine femininity, you see her pause at a small shrine near the corner of the room. She lights a bit of frankincense and bows her head. You can't help but feel the weight of it all, the pressure to embody not just beauty, but sacredness. Not just allure, but cosmic order. It's a kind of burden that transcends time. For thousands of years across cultures and continents, Women have been told their worth lies in the face they present to the world, whether to God's kings or commoners. The scent of the resin curls through the room. Outside you hear the distant cry of a hawk and the rustling of palm leaves. Another day begins under the watchful eye of Ra. You step back into the shadows as the priestess exits her footsteps, soundless on the stone. She is radiant and slowly dying. It's easy to romanticize ancient Egypt. The gold, the eyeliner, the perfumes they feel eternal exotic, somehow beyond the reach of modern cynicism. But the truth is more complex. The allure came with danger. The glamour concealed suffering. And behind each pot of color, each ritual application was a woman like any other, trying to live, to serve, to be seen, and to survive. You don't hear her enter the room. She glides more than walks her steps, silent against the tatami mat, her form ethereal as if cut from smoke. Her kimono layers upon layers of silk in muted indigo soft cream, and shadowy gray shifts only slightly as she kneels before the mirror. You are still adjusting to the candlelight, but her presence, pale and solemn, burns softly through the dim. Her face is not her own, not entirely. It has become a canvas, an offering to ritual, a mask so perfectly painted that it erases time, personality, even emotion. Her skin gleams white as snow flattened under moonlight. Her lips a trembling trace of red painted small and symmetrical in the center of her mouth. The most unnerving feature, though, is her teeth. Black and glossy, each one coated with a lacquer that shines when she parts her lips, as if she smiles with obsidian. You've arrived in the court of Heian Japan, and beauty here is silence, stillness, and the concealment of self. You are not a visitor. You are her. A high-born woman of the Heian period, one of the most refined but psychologically confining eras in Japanese history. It is the 10th century, and while your robes flow like poetry, and your face reflects candlelight, like porcelain, your life is built around vanishing, becoming less visible, less audible, less tangible. Here, elegance is restraint. From the moment you wake, your day is carefully scripted by centuries of etiquette. You sleep behind silk screens in a chamber scented with incense. No harsh sunlight enters here, only filtered light chosen for its softness. You rise without sound. Maids await you, but they do not chatter. Their movements are like those of shadows slipping between the folds of the morning. The first ritual is the face, not to reveal but to conceal. You sit before a mirror of polished bronze, and the preparations begin. Rice powder, painstakingly ground and sifted, is applied in layer after layer, until your skin becomes blank smooth and nearly luminous. Then 2 small spots of crimson are dotted on the lips. Not the full shape, only a suggestion of a mouth. Finally, your teeth are painted black. The substance is called Ohaguro, a mixture of iron filings and vinegar. It stains permanently, requiring constant maintenance and reapplication, and it carries with it a distinct taste of metal and fermented bitterness. Why blacken the teeth? It is a mark of maturity and refinement. In Heian court society, white teeth were seen as vulgar, animalistic. They were raw and exposed. A proper woman, a noble lady, had no need to smile widely, certainly not in public, and should never show desire, hunger, or glee. Her face must remain unreadable, like the moon on a still pond. Your eyebrows are equally coded. They are shaved entirely, then redrawn high on the forehead, in rounded arcs, soft, abstract, elegant. The result is not meant to mimic reality, but to transcend it. You are not just a woman. You are a figure from a painting, an embodiment of aesthetic ideals. This transformation is not a solitary act. It's witnessed and judged, though never allowed. Your husband may never see your real face. Instead, he sees the symbol of what you represent. And even he, should he visit you, would do so behind screens, reading your poems rather than your expressions. There are no open courtships here, No dramatic confessions or stolen glances. Love in Heian Japan is crafted in ink and incense. You compose poems, dozens, hundreds in a lifetime, each one written in elegant kana script, on washi paper, perfumed with personal blends. These poems are not just expressions of affection. They are your voice, your smile, your rebellion. A clever turn of phrase, a subtle metaphor. These are how you flirt, how you reveal slivers of yourself in a society that demands your erasure. You might receive a poem from a suitor. He will not appear in person. He will send it tucked within folds of brocade scented faintly of agarwood. If you reply, you must do so in kind. Delay too long and you seem cold. Respond too quickly and you appear desperate. Every nuance is loaded. Every detail is a performance. Later, if a man is granted permission to visit, he will do so only at night. He must come in darkness and leave before dawn. His arrival is silent, his departure unnoticed. If he stays, he lies behind layers of curtains. You may never look him in the eye. If he writes of your meeting afterward anonymously in his diary, you may find your identity preserved in metaphor or buried beneath layers of allegory. Here in Heian society, visibility is not power. To be seen is to be cheapened. A woman's influence lies in subtlety and mystery. The less you speak, the more weight your words carry. The less you show, the more imagination fills in the gaps. But this quiet power comes at a cost. Your life is bound by walls, fabric walls, etiquette walls, emotional walls. You may go weeks without seeing the sky. Your world shrinks to your chambers. Your brush, your mirror. You live by candlelight and rumor. A stray glance, an unguarded laugh, these could ruin your standing. So you guard everything, especially yourself. The court's obsession with beauty masks something deeper, a deep discomfort with the physical. Touch is rare. Laughter frowned upon. Even in childbirth, many noblewomen do not raise their own children. Wet nurses care for infants. Tutors teach them poetry and calligraphy. Your role is to symbolize perfection, not participate in the mess of life. But in your quiet, you find ways to endure. The art of scent becomes your rebellion. You mix oils late at night, testing combinations, until you find the perfect blend, a signature that no one else can claim. You master poetry, filling scroll after scroll with thoughts no one dares speak. You find camaraderie with other women, bonding through coded glances and half-spoken truths. And sometimes you dream of wind, of sun, of a voice raised in laughter that no one silences. Historians still argue whether the isolation of Heian court women made them powerless or gave them a unique form of literary freedom. Certainly many of Japan's greatest early writers, like Sei Shonagon and Murasaki Shikibu, were women of this world. Their works endure because within their gilded cages, they carved out rooms of their own. And yet you can't help but feel the strain. Your body aches from hours kneeling on tatami. Your skin itches beneath the powder, the lacquer, the weight of pretense. You haven't felt the warmth of sunlight on your unpainted face in years. Still tomorrow you will rise again before dawn. You will light the incense. You will blend the powder. You will paint your face. Because in this world, beauty is duty, and duty is everything. You take another step into the candlelit ballroom heels, echoing faintly against the marbled floor. The scent hits you first. It's not perfume, not exactly, but something denser. Powdered lavender, faded lilac, and a pungent musk that clings to the velvet drapes, like a memory too strong to forget. Somewhere behind you, a violin sighs a waltz, its rhythm, muffled by chatter and the rustle of heavy gowns. The air is thick, not just with fragrance, but with heat. The kind of warmth that comes not from fire, but from too many bodies, too much fabric, and far too many secrets. You're at Versailles now, a guest, though not of any real consequence. You're simply here to observe, to drift unnoticed among the glittering aristocracy, and see what they'd rather not admit. Tonight, you've been granted entrance into one of Louis XIV's smaller soirees. The grand salons are reserved for more prestigious names, but this is where the wigs are tallest, the laughter shrillest, and the masks barely hold. A noblewoman in an apricot satin gown swishes past her skirt, wide enough to knock over a small footstool. You step back quickly, steadying yourself against the edge of a settee, but your gaze drifts upward to her hair. No, not hair. That towering construction isn't something one grows. It's something built. Her powdered wig rises a foot above her head, sculpted into coils and pleats like an elaborate pastry. Small glass birds are perched at the crown, and silk ribbons cascade down the back, like a waterfall of confectionery excess. And then, just for a moment, you see it. A flicker of movement. You blink, unsure. Perhaps a trick of the candlelight. But no, it happens again, a small, twitching gesture, beneath the fluff of white powder. You lean slightly closer, and as she turns, you catch at a tiny speck crawling determinedly near the base of her neck. Not a bead of sweat, not a fleck of lint. It's a louse. You recoil slightly, but no one else seems to notice. Or perhaps they do and have simply learned not to react. After all, these wigs, so elaborate, so sculptural, so symbolic of wealth and power, are rarely washed. They're worn for weeks at a time, kept in place with pig-fat lard and a dusting of scented powder. And where there is fat warmth and human skin, there is life. Tiny, unwelcome life. A nearby gentleman offers his arm to a duchess, bowing with a smile that reveals 3 remaining teeth, all leaning in different directions. His powdered cheeks are cracked slightly from the heat, and as he straightens, you see another speck fall, this time from his own wig. It lands on the brocade of his shoulder, crawls briefly, then disappears beneath the collar. You want to look away, but you can't. You remember reading once quietly in some footnote of a history book that during one royal wedding reception at Versailles, Lice were seen falling like dandruff from the wigs of the bridal party. Marie-Thérèse, daughter of Louis XIV, reportedly continued her smiling procession while guests discreetly brushed their sleeves and adjusted their cuffs. Some historians still argue whether this tale was exaggerated, a metaphor for the moral decay beneath the powdered surface. But lice, they agree, were no fiction. They were common, expected, a fact of life disguised with scent and satin. You look around the ballroom now with fresh eyes. The velvet, the chandeliers, the gilded mirrors, they all shimmer with theatrical splendor. But beneath it there's discomfort. Women shifting subtly under corsets too tight. Men dabbing at their foreheads with lace-edged handkerchiefs. Servants refilling cups with trembling hands, always watching, always fearing a misstep. No one comments on the lice. No one will. To speak of such things would be to admit that beneath all the glamour, there is something deeply bodily human. Instead, another tray of pastries is brought out, small, flaky, filled with marzipan and clove. You take one more for something to do than any hunger. The heat and perfume have dulled your appetite, and the room is beginning to feel as though it tilts slightly with every breath. You cross to the side where a few quieter guests have gathered near the windows. The glass is fogged with condensation, blurring the garden beyond into a watercolor smear of green and gray. A servant passes behind you, adjusting the drapery. As he does, you hear a whisper, 2 maids talking in low tones behind a folding screen. One mentions a brush found with something living inside it. The other gasps, but they both return to their tasks. You realize that maintaining these wigs, these masks of powdered elegance, requires daily attention. Special combs, scented oils, and occasionally, though rarely, a full fumigation. Some aristocrats paid hair gardeners to tend their wigs, as others might tend orchards, trimming, powdering, and removing unwanted pests. But even the best care couldn't prevent everything, and so Versailles glittered while quietly crawling. You wonder how these women endure it, to live inside a mask of beauty so extreme it invites infestation, to carry literal creatures in your crown of glory yet smile through the dance, and more to know that if anyone saw, they'd never say a word. It reminds you perhaps uncomfortably of how modern people still wear masks. Metaphorical, now smiling through burnout, perfecting appearances while inside something gnaws. Perhaps not lice, but anxiety, fear, shame. There is something timeless in the quiet desperation beneath perfection. You drift back into the room where the music swells and couples begin a slow quadrille. You count the steps, listen to the shoes on polished wood, the click of pearls, the ripple of silk. The rhythm is beautiful, impossibly poised. But you can't stop thinking about what just fell onto your sleeve. What else might be falling now? The dance continues. The candles flicker. And Versailles in all its splendor continues to glitter on the surface. Only on the surface. Later that night, once the musicians have packed away their instruments and the final glasses of wine have been drained, you find yourself lingering in the hall outside the ballroom. The silence here is thicker. You press your back lightly against a wall, gilded with fleur-de-lis patterns, breathing in through your nose. Finally a breath not laced with powder and perfume. Somewhere far off, a servant stokes a dying fire. The crackle feels real in a way nothing in the ballroom did. You glance at your reflection in a darkened mirror. A fine layer of powder clings to your lashes. Even you, just a visitor here, have been dusted lightly by the night. That louse, the one that landed on your sleeve, was not a personal insult. It was in many ways a symbol, an echo of Versailles itself, something beautiful from afar but unsettling up close. It's one of those historical truths we don't often dwell on, isn't it? We imagine this palace as a golden marvel, which it was, but we forget that beauty, when stretched too far, rots at the edges. There are stories, odd little tidbits that have slipped through time like crumbs under a tapestry of noblewomen, sleeping upright in their chairs to protect their wigs. Some even wore small cages around their heads to stop the mice from nesting in the large stiffened curls. Yes, mice. Not metaphorical ones either. Real creatures drawn by the scent of fat warmth, and the flour often used in wig powder. It's said one lady of court awoke once to a gentle tugging at her ear, only to find a mouse had chewed through the back of her hairpiece, and was building a nest in the powdered center. You wonder how many such stories have been lost, because they were too ridiculous to write down, too shameful to share. And yet they're precisely the details that make history feel real. The scandalous becomes mundane when everyone lives it, and the disgusting becomes tolerable when it's hidden beneath gold leaf and etiquette. Historians today still debate how much of these accounts are exaggerated. Were all wigs infested? Was every head a teeming nest of vermin? Probably not, but enough of them were to leave a trace. And that trace, however faint, tells us more about Versailles than another inventory of jewels, or an oil portrait ever could. You walk the corridor slowly now, past portraits hung too high to meet your eyes. Women in lace and pearls stare outward, their painted faces serene, untouched, their real lives much messier, much more human. You can't help but wonder how they smelled, what they worried about, how often they scratched. At the far end of the corridor, a smaller salon opens onto a quiet balcony. The air outside is cool, deliciously sharp. You step through, resting your hands on the stone railing. Moonlight paints the gardens below in soft gray, the hedges like sleeping beasts curled beneath the stars. From here you can't see the lice. You can't smell the powdered wigs or hear the scratch of stockings. It's peaceful. And that's how it was often. The beauty held if you didn't look too closely. But you've looked closely now. You've seen beneath the wig. And you'll never forget what you found there. You're standing in a shaded chamber, somewhere deep within a Mughal palace deli perhaps, or Agra, though the difference wouldn't matter to you now. The scent of crushed marigold and whetstone clings to the air, sweet and mineral, like something alive and old all at once. The ceiling arches above you in perfect scalloped curves, each echo softened by curtains thick as winter cloaks. You are not here as a guest, of course. You're lying flat on a woven mat, your limbs tucked neatly dressed in layers of silk that rustle with every shallow breath. The light is low, filtered through yali screens, cutting the air into lattices of warmth and shadow. But in this palace, warmth does not mean comfort. Your face is still. You've learned not to twitch, not even when the mixture touches your cheek, the golden paste that smells faintly of honey and turmeric, but stings like citrus in a cut. The maid doesn't warn you. She never does. You've stopped hoping she will. With slow, practiced fingers, she spreads the paste across your skin. It's thick and a little gritty. Crushed herbs ground sandalwood, a secret ratio of saffron and milk. And gold. Always gold. That's what makes it gleam like sunrise before it dries. That's what makes it dangerous. They call it the face of emperors, the glow of a goddess. But under your skin you can feel the way it tightens, pulls, settles into every pore like something alive. You imagine the particles, minute flakes of actual gold dragging over the surface of your skin like glass dust, carving invisible trails. The maid hums a low tune under her breath. You don't know the words, but the sound feels as old as the stone floor beneath you. The gold isn't just for show. In the Mughal court, it's a symbol of divine beauty, royal favor, and unyielding discipline. Empresses and noblewomen are expected to shine literally. Your skin must be flawless, not just in appearance, but in symbolism. It must reflect purity, devotion, and wealth. Anything less invites scrutiny, gossip, and shame. And so you endure this daily ritual, knowing that the glow others admire is carved from discomfort. The paste dries into a fine, brittle mask. You feel it flake at the corners of your mouth if you dare to breathe too deeply. You wonder how long it will take before the maid returns to scrape it off with the edge of a polished shell. She used to use cloth, but the shell leaves fewer abrasions, fewer bruises. There's mercy in that, you suppose. Outside, somewhere past the screen, you hear the rhythmic plucking of a tanpura. Music floats into the room like dust motes. A gentle reminder that the world continues even as you lie still a canvas for beauty shaped by tradition and pressure. You think about the women who came before you, Jahanara Roshanara wives, consorts, daughters who endured similar rituals, each trying to become a living reflection of power. Historians still debate whether these masks were purely cosmetic, or whether they served medicinal purposes as well. Some argue that turmeric and honey had antibacterial effects, that saffron promoted healing. Others say the true purpose was psychological, an act of submission, of stillness, of proving one's worth by silent endurance. After all, beauty wasn't passive. It was a form of labor, and labor was a form of loyalty. The maid returns. She kneels beside you without a word and begins to flake the mask away. Your skin tingles with every stroke. Not pain exactly, just an awareness that you are being reshaped, that your face is no longer entirely your own, that something is taken each day, molecule by molecule, in exchange for acceptance. You don't cry. That would ruin the finish. Later, when you sit upright and a mirror is placed before you, you see her work. The glow is undeniable, opalescent, and strange like moonlight over polished marble. You do not recognize your own face. That, too, is part of the ritual. You are not meant to. And yet you smile. Because that's what you've been taught to do. Because you've survived another morning without flaw, without rebellion, without tears. You know women elsewhere begin their days with powder and ribbons, but here you begin with a mask of metal and silence. Here you shine, even if it cuts. The warmth of the mask begins to tighten across your face as it dries. You resist the urge to shift or frown. Movement would crack the surface and ruin the effect. Somewhere in the room, water drips slowly into a basin, each plink echoing like a countdown. Your eyes trace the fine seams where the golden paste meets your skin. The Empress lies beside you, eyes closed, expression serene as stone. But you know her stillness is practiced beneath the calm lies tension. She's as aware of the risks as you are. Everyone in the Zenana knows the price of imperfection. Minutes pass in silence. Then, with a quiet murmur, a maid returns. In her hands is a strip of cotton gauze, dipped in a cold solution made of rose water and alum. She begins to remove the mask with slow, practiced care. You feel the gold lift from your skin, tugging gently, but insistently. Not all of it comes away cleanly. Tiny fragments remain embedded in the fine hairs at your temples and along your cheekbones. The maid does not flinch. She uses a curved copper blade, a delicate tool designed for such moments, to scrape them away bit by shimmering bit. The blade glides smoothly, but you feel every pass. Not pain exactly, but a tingling and alertness beneath your skin. And when she's done, your face is flushed, glowing and slightly raw. This is considered beautiful, radiance bought not from health, but from controlled injury. Historians still argue whether Mughal beauty practices were a form of empowerment, expressions of opulence and artistry, or simply another layer of court control, trapping women in gilded rituals that left them no room to breathe. You are helped up and led to a polished mirror of silvered glass imported from Venice. You blink against the reflection. The transformation is undeniable. Your skin gleams like wet petals. The faint redness along your cheekbones has already begun to fade into a soft warmth that will glow under candlelight. You are beautiful by every measure the court has set. But you are also tired and just a little sore. The Empress rises next to you. Her attendants adjust her dupatta, spritz her with sandalwood mist, and dab crushed pearls along the high points of her face. She offers a glance unreadable, but not unkind. You return it with a small bow. This performance is complete. Another awaits. Later that evening, in the perfumed hush of the royal courtyard, you see the same Empress beneath hanging lanterns. Her face is flawless. Her steps measured, her smile delicate as the edge of a blade. Men bow. Poets recite verses composed in her honor. But as you catch a glimpse of her turning away, something falters. Just for a moment. Her eyes close longer than necessary. A breath stutters in her chest. You recognize it because you feel it too. Back in your chamber, you sit before a low table, scattered with tools of the trade pots of turmeric slivers of sandalwood. Tiny brushes bound with silk thread. You press your fingers against your cheek. The heat is still there, just beneath the skin. You think of the golden paste, its shimmer, its sting, and you wonder quietly how many layers of yourself you have scrubbed away just to keep up. The night deepens. In the distance, bells toll from the palace temple. A breeze slips through the carved lattice windows, lifting the corners of your veil. You close your eyes. The court expects you to wake before dawn. There will be another mask to wear, another face to sculpt, another chance to be beautiful, whatever that means today. You lie back on your woven mat, the scent of gold and sweat still clinging to your skin. The stars above you burn indifferent, and you, one of the most adorned women in the empire, drift slowly into sleep, not quite sure where your true face ends and the one they've molded begins. You don't remember how long you've been watching her. A figure bent under lamplight hands, working with quiet precision. Her sleeves are rolled neatly above the wrist, and her thin fingers stir the mixture with practiced ease, dark liquid swirling in a small ceramic bowl. You recognize the smell before you understand the ingredients. It's sharp, smoky, faintly metallic. Ink. Real ink. Not for writing scrolls or painting characters, but for painting skin. She is one of the handmaidens in the Vietnamese imperial court, and what she's making isn't calligraphy. It's beauty. There are no fancy jars, no polished ivory tools, just a chipped bowl, a bird feather stripped of its vein, and a worn piece of silk for blotting. You're in a dim chamber deep inside the palace at Hue, where the air smells of mold bamboo and a hint of jasmine rising from someone's sleeve. The woman works without speaking. The oil lamp casts a low, buttery glow over her hands. The ink is made from muktao, or soot-based Chinese ink ground, carefully with alum, and infused with sesame oil. She tests a dot on her wrist, squints at the darkness, and nods slightly. The balance is just right, fluid enough to glide, dense enough to stay. This is how beauty is drawn here, not sculpted with powder or framed with gold, but inked into the body like a poem. She is preparing to line another court lady's eyes, delicate arcs that suggest grace, loyalty, and composure. In the world outside this palace, eyes are windows to the soul. But in here, they are mirrors for others. Always calm, always lowered, always unreadable. Your motion to sit closer, and the bowl is passed to another handmaiden, who begins to trace the first line at the corner of a lady's eye. The feather flicks outward, barely touching skin. It's beautiful, silent, controlled. You realize now this isn't just cosmetics. It's calligraphy, but written on flesh. Precision is everything because mistakes are not allowed. A trembling hand, a broken bristle, a drop too thick, and the result isn't just smudged eyeliner. It's shame. And sometimes it's blindness. Historical records from the Nguyen dynasty confirm that women in the inner court used a blend of traditional Chinese ink mixed with powdered alum and oil for eye decoration. Alum acted as a fixative, keeping the ink from running, but it also carried risks. A bad batch could burn. A slight miscalculation in the pH could cause inflammation of the eyelid. And then there was the ink itself, made from soot collected from burned pine or oil ground into a stick, then diluted. Beautiful, yes, but dangerous. It's said that some palace women developed ulcers in their tear ducts. Others lost their peripheral vision. There are no medical charts for this. Just oral accounts, whispers passed down among descendants of palace workers, and a few eerie mentions in memoirs. One described the sensation as tears that sting like ash, another as the soft blindness of beauty creeping in. And yet the look it produced, piercing, controlled, unnervingly perfect, was worth it in the eyes of the court. Unlike the elaborate French-imported makeup used by Vietnamese elites outside the palace in the 19th century, inner court aesthetics emphasized restraint and discipline. The eyes were never smoky or smudged. They were shaped like almond leaves, with lines so thin they disappeared under candlelight, but hinted ever so gently at elegance. The tidbit here is one of quiet ingenuity. Some court women aware of the danger developed their own secret ink formulas, using non-toxic charcoal from burnt banana leaves mixed with lotus oil instead of sesame. It smelled different, less sharp, but it came with fewer burns. These secret recipes were guarded like family heirlooms, passed from one trusted friend to another, often only when marriage or death loosened a tongue. And still, despite their innovations, accidents happened. A woman's status in the court could fall not because of scandal or betrayal, but because one morning the line of her eye looked uneven. Scholars today debate the actual ingredients in the ink for eyes, as few surviving artifacts remain. Some believe alum was never intended for cosmetic use, while others argue its inclusion was deliberate, intended to symbolize the pain that must accompany any form of female refinement. Whatever the truth, the effect was devastating. In the candlelit corridors of the forbidden Purple City, beauty came with silence, stillness, and sometimes partial sight loss. You don't hear screams here, only soft coughs, murmurs through silk fans, and the clink of a ceramic bowl being returned to its shelf. You're led to another chamber, where a noblewoman sits before a mirror framed in lacquer and gold. She leans forward, inspecting her face, as a third handmaiden touches up her brows using a fine bamboo splinter dipped in the same ink. Unlike modern penciled-in arches, these brows are drawn not for volume or fashion, but for meaning. Too high, and she looks arrogant. Too low and she appears servile. There's a precise angle refined through centuries of Confucian etiquette that conveys poise without pride. The room holds its breath as the second brow is finished. She closes her eyes. A single nod. It's done. You try to picture a modern makeup tutorial, pausing for a philosophical discussion about the ideal eyebrow angle. But in this court, beauty is not for Instagram. It's a ritual of stillness, an echo of hierarchy, a performance of humility laced with hazard. What strikes you most is not the pain or the risk, but the precision. Every movement in this palace is a thread in a larger tapestry. The tilt of a head, the pause between steps, the exact weight of a glance, they all mean something. You suddenly realize beauty here is not meant to draw attention. It's meant to erase it, to blend the woman into the protocol, the scrollwork, the architecture. She isn't the art. She is the frame. And so the routine goes on. The bowl is cleaned, the ink poured into a tiny glass vial to be sealed and locked away. The brushes are rinsed in a ceramic basin that's been used for generations. The women say nothing, their movements smooth from years of repetition. You wonder how many pairs of eyes were lined here, how many saw their last clear morning before pain blurred the world. The wind shifts slightly, carrying in a whiff of ylang-ylang and wet stone. Somewhere outside, a bell rings, signaling the hour of midday. In the courtyard, musicians begin warming up for the emperor's procession. But here in this room of women and ink and ritual, time stands still. And for a brief moment you understand the strange duality of palace beauty. It's about visibility and invisibility at once. You must be perfect, so you won't be noticed. You must shine just enough to disappear into the gilded walls. You're nearly at the end now. Not just the end of the corridor or the palace grounds or even the night, but the end of something quieter. The end of pretending. Because after all the powders and perfumes, the golden masks and false lashes, the careful curtsies and ritualized suffering, what remains behind the veil of royal beauty is far less lovely. And you feel it, don't you, in your chest, in the pit of your stomach, that subtle ache of knowing what it costs to be endlessly admired. You're no longer walking through just one palace or one country or one century. You're floating now a ghost among ghosts, trailing your fingertips along centuries of painted faces and broken spines. They're all around you, women in silk and satin velvet, and lace veiled and unveiled. Some are statuesque, others slouched in chairs too ornate to hold the weight of fatigue. They hold fans, mirrors, tiny pots of carmine or charcoal, but none of them are smiling. Their mouths are still fixed in practiced neutrality or trembling from something deeper. If you've been paying attention, you've already noticed the pattern. In every court, whether French or Egyptian, Mughal or Vietnamese, the beauty itself was never the problem. The problem was what the beauty had to mean. Because beauty, especially royal beauty, wasn't just a personal preference or a bit of fun. It was duty. It was currency. It was armor and prison and language all at once. It was how a young noblewoman might secure a marriage, or how a queen held a court in thrall. It was how you were remembered in tapestries, or dismissed entirely in footnotes. Your value sat on your cheekbones, curled in your hair, or stained your lips, sometimes permanently, sometimes fatally. Even now, centuries later, historians sift through portraits and funeral masks, trying to guess how many women died because they were trying to look acceptable. Not stunning, not perfect, just acceptable. Because to fail in beauty was often to fail entirely. It's easy to miss this truth if you only study the paintings. The portraits never show the shaking fingers after the lead lace lipstick has been applied. They don't show the crust forming at the edge of wounds from tight corset ribs. They don't show the infection creeping under golden masks, or the bruises hidden beneath sleeves. What they do show is symmetry, stillness, and an eerie glow, a shine that, once you know what to look for, always suggests something unnatural. Do you remember that first queen you saw Elizabeth face, masked in Venetian ceruse. Even her portraits, regal as they are, can't hide the damage. Her skin grew so brittle and broken beneath the layers that she eventually refused to be seen without it. Not even her closest courtiers saw her real face in her final years. The illusion had to be preserved even in private, because to be seen without beauty was to be unworthy of attention, let alone affection, and she was far from alone. In Ming Dynasty, China records survive of court ladies who scrubbed their faces with crushed pearl and bathed in quicksilver. Many died young of fevers no one dared name. In Victorian England, arsenic wafers were sold in pretty tins to brighten complexions, available even to middle-class girls, desperate for that consumptive glow. And in the Ottoman Empire, the harem's most prized concubines were sometimes dosed with opium to keep them docile, while beauticians threaded, painted, and plucked for hours. All of this for the hope of a glance, a nod, a fleeting rise in rank. Historians still debate how much agency these women had. Were they choosing these routines willingly, or were they coerced by invisible systems of power and tradition? The truth likely lives somewhere in the middle. But what's harder to argue is the cost. Physical, mental, spiritual. For each drop of rose water, there was a drop of blood. For each pressed flower petal, a patch of skin rubbed raw. Some survived the routines and rituals. Many didn't. And for those who did survive, it wasn't always a victory, because aging was the next enemy. Once the bloom faded, once the hands grew wrinkled, or the hair lost its luster, the same systems that praised a woman's beauty now made her invisible, cast her aside, or worse, pitied her. There are accounts of former court favorites living in exile within palaces, still technically respected, but no longer permitted to appear at events, as if their faded faces might frighten guests. Even in death, the pressure lingered. Corpses were rouged and powdered before royal funerals. Hair was arranged posthumously. In some cases, embalming fluids were colored to keep the skin pink. One Spanish queen had so much makeup packed onto her face for her final viewing that mourners thought she looked more beautiful than ever. No one seemed disturbed by that. But you are, aren't you? Because now you've seen behind the scenes. You've watched the hair pinned and the rouge applied, the eyes lined and the lashes glued. You've seen the quiet agony in every movement, the burning vinegar baths, the cracked knuckles from handling poisonous pigments, the dizziness from breathing too deeply near scented oils. You've seen a woman use candle wax to seal a blister before a state dinner. You've seen another bite her tongue until it bled to avoid flinching during hot waxing. And all of it was considered normal, expected, refined. But now that you've walked these halls and sat by these mirrors, what do you think maybe you'll remember the women? Not by their gowns or their titles, but by the strange intimacy of their mornings, the cold water on their cheeks, the stifled yawns, the way they sometimes looked away from the mirror just for a second as if to escape it. Maybe you'll think of them as full humans, not mannequins or muses or villains, but tired people trying to survive an impossible game. Tonight, as you slip into sleep, carry this with you. Behind every flawless portrait is a story of endurance. A woman who knew the rules, obeyed them, and paid the price. Some became legends. Some were forgotten. But all of them lived through moments, just like the one you're having now. Quiet, reflective aching, to feel real beneath the layers. So go ahead. Let yourself rest now. Pull the blanket up to your chin. Notice the weight of your body against the bed. Take one last slow breath in, and as you let it go, imagine all the rouge and ribbon, all the pearl dust and perfume falling away like petals in the dark. You are not here to perform. You are not here to impress. You are here to be. And if someone ever asks you what royal beauty really looked like, you'll know. It looked like grace in pain, like silence in the face of scrutiny, like a smile worn over a mouthful of sores. And it looked like you just as you are if you'd been born at the wrong time, in the wrong palace, under the wrong expectations. Good night, brave soul. You've seen enough for one evening.